Israel has certainly been exposed for what it is and always has been, which is a racist, apartheid, genocidal state. They can't hide that anymore. They're an international pariah like the United States. As long as the U.S. keeps funneling the weapons, and what Biden gave $22 billion between October 7th and September, and then has requested another $20 billion, and Trump will certainly give them everything as like Biden. There'll be no difference for the Palestinians between Trump and Biden. The difference will be rhetorical. So they want to annex the West Bank. Biden would condemn it and do nothing, and Trump will embrace it and do nothing. But for a Palestinian, it will make any difference. It's the weapons. We got to cut the weapons off. That'll may take a generation before people have enough.
Rob Breyer, now that the West and NATO has been completely humiliated in Ukraine and the entire world sees it, now they are floating the possibility of launching preemptive strikes on Russia. Their mindset being, after Putin is done with Ukraine, he's going to invade Eastern Europe. So before he invades Eastern Europe, we should change our mindset and we shouldn't wait to be attacked by Putin. That's literally a quote that he says here. This is one of the quote. It's more competent not to wait, but to hit launchers in Russia in case Russia attacks us. So now we have very high-level people in NATO floating the idea of attacking Russia even before Russia launches this hypothetical attack. So I want to get your thoughts, Chris, on the NATO obsession with provoking war with the nuclear power of Russia. And obviously there's 1,000 criticisms to be had of the previous generation of the ruling class, but at least the Cold Warriors understood how engaging in conflict with a nuclear power could be catastrophic. It seems like the new generation of the ruling class don't even respect that. What are your thoughts on that, Chris?
Well, these kind of figures they make Dr. Strangelove look like a documentary. I know a lot of these people. I had to interview them, including the head of NATO. They don't understand geopolitics. I was in East Germany and when it was unified with West Germany, and I was there when the promises were made to Gorbachev not to expand NATO beyond the borders of a unified Germany. Those promises were made because that unification could not take place unless Russia or the Soviet Union acquiesced, which they did. The promises were broken for a couple of reasons. One was hubris, the collapse of the Soviet Union, and Russia's a broken figure. We can do whatever we want, a unipolar world. But then also the billions and billions of dollars that were made in arms sales, reconfiguring countries in the Warsaw Pact to make their military equipment, NATO compatible. NATO should have been rendered obsolete. In fact, we all in 1989 naively believed that it would be, because it was created and supposedly to prevent Russian expansion into Central and Eastern Europe. But NATO, became intimately involved in aggressive wars in Iraq. Go to Iraq or Afghanistan and ask them whether, NATO is a defensive entity. This is just utterly insane and dangerous because, of course, if you do preemptive strikes against Russia, you've guaranteed that you're going to war. With Russia, it is as foolish as the domino theory. We have to fight in Vietnam because if not, Vietnam will go and then all the other countries will go. And then just, Nick, on your last point, look, Ukraine was a classic proxy war. I covered proxy wars all over the globe. And the idea was never anything about Ukrainian independence. These people knew, the people flooding Ukraine with military equipment knew very well that they could never win a war of attrition. That was irrelevant. They knew very well that eventually you'd have to do a kind of land for peace exchange with Crimea. They knew all that, but the goal was to degrade the Russian military in a prolonged war, which Ukrainians would bleed for, and their cities would be destroyed for, and to isolate Putin within Europe, which they succeeded. So their goals were achieved, but the blowback was that it pushed Putin into the arms of Beijing. And one of the mantras of the Cold War was to keep Beijing and Moscow apart. And so, ironically, what they did is created a formidable alliance. Russia, rich in natural resources, China, technologically advanced, a very bad marriage for the American empire, which they created in their stupidity and their myopia. So, yeah, I hear language like this. Look, I spent a lot of time in military entities, and I can assure you the higher up you go within the chain of command, the lower the IQ. Yeah, and so that, what you just read is kind of evidence of utter idiocy and stupidity, and why these people should not be driving policy.
These people, on one hand, they constantly tell stuff that makes no sense. They will tell us that Putin is a madman who has no respect for human life. And then on the other hand, they say, oh, let's not listen to Putin's saber rattling. He will never do anything too crazy. Is Putin a madman or is he not? But anyway, we still, I want to pass it to Kshama. Anything you want to add to the Ukraine conversation? Well, anything else you want to add, Kshama? You want to chime in?
Just to chime in a little bit. It's as Chris was saying that this is so a proxy war. But what has changed since the beginning of the Russia-Ukraine war and today is that they're no longer, they meaning the U.S. ruling class, is no longer able to sell this as to the American working people as a war that is supposed to bring freedom to the Ukrainians. Now it's so nakedly clear that this is and always was a proxy war between the US-led bloc and the China-Russia-led bloc, and then obviously the first move was made by the US-led bloc. So in other words, this is we are in a situation where not only do we have a genocide happening in Gaza and also the wider bloodshed in the Middle East, we've also had a bloodbath happening in Ukraine where countless people have died, and you have a Ukrainian military which is now literally trolling bars and other public places in order to carry off young men, people to war. It is just unspeakable. And this is and clearly the new announcements are showing how reckless the capitalist class is and how willingly they're going to take humanity as a whole into World War III. They're willing to do that because the blood that will be spilled will be the blood of working class and poor people the world over. And this does not even take into account the climate apocalypse that is at our doorstep. So in other words, you have wars raging. It's no longer a cold war either. It's hot wars are raging. You have the climate crisis. You have massive displacement and migration of just ordinary people, poor people whose lives are utterly ravaged. Tens of millions of people. It will be billions of people before you know it. And so you have and climate crisis itself and the migration led by more and more uninhabitable places will also lead to war and crisis and chaos and conflict. So you have this sort of spiraling of all of this. And in the middle of this dark scenario, you also have more and more and more working people understanding that this system doesn't work. So I think that we have to take this moment, those of us who have a sense of responsibility about where the world is headed, it is absolutely urgent for us to show that leadership. This is not a moment to be coy and engaging in false modesty. These these ideas that we are talking about, the fighting ideas, they are needed not only in the US, but we need internationally in order to stop the wars. For example, we will need an international anti-war movement led by the working class, led by a militant labor movement on multiple continents. And this can be done, but only on the basis of the kinds of ideas that we are talking about. And that's why it's crucial that at least, as first steps, as many of your viewers know, we're organizing this conference on February 22nd. Both of you are going to be speaking there. We're going to have Chris Hedges, We're going to have Jill Stein. We're going to have Revolutionary Blackout Network, Due Dissidents, and hopefully many labor leaders as well, on the left, who refuse to join the Democratic Party bandwagon, who will come and speak. And most importantly, we need working class people. If you're watching this and if you can cobble together the flight expense, I know it will be expensive to fly to Seattle. It is going to be extremely crucial. In-person discussions are extremely crucial. And the day after, on February 23rd, we'll have the inaugural in-person Workers' Strike Back National Convention. So these are small developments, but these are the only glimmers of hope that we have now. And so it is important for us to seize on them and really provide that kind of leadership that we need at this moment.
Very well said. And I just want to share some of the organizing efforts that you guys are doing at Workers' Strike Back, who I'm always honored to be organizing with as well. I want to ask Chris this last question as we wrap up here, because we're going to cover Ukraine more in detail with Kit Clarenberg. Unfortunately, time flew by this stream. So Kit Clarenberg will be joining us live. We're going to discuss more into the NATO proxy war. There was breaking news before we went live how there's a ceasefire in Lebanon, and I was listening to Benjamin Netanyahu speak about it because I'm a fucking psychopath apparently, and he essentially said that the reason why he engaging in the ceasefire talk with Lebanon, we know the real reason is because the IDF is also getting their ass beat, but because he want to focus on Iran. So now we have the conflict with Iran that's stirring up, and what I describe as a genocidal psychosis in the West with their obsession with killing Arabs, with helping Israel achieve their goal of a greater Israel. So real quick, I know we're going a little bit long here. So Chris, I want to get your thoughts just really quick about the genocidal psychosis of the West and the actions of Israel. I may have been a little bit too, you guys know I'm an optimist. I've been saying I think this is like the death knell of the Zionist regime. The economy is in shambles. Tourism is dying. Do you share that same opinion? What are your thoughts on the state of Israel right now?
I don't know. It's the death knell. I mean, it is precipitating the decay. These decayed regimes can stay on far longer than we expect. But Israel has certainly been exposed for what it is and always has been, which is a racist, apartheid, genocidal state. They can't hide that anymore. They're an international pariah like the United States. So as long as the U.S. keeps funneling the weapons, and what Biden gave $22 billion between October 7th and September, and then has requested another $20 billion, and Trump will certainly give them everything as like Biden. There'll be no difference for the Palestinians between Trump and Biden. The difference will be rhetorical. So they want to annex the West Bank. Biden would condemn it and do nothing, and Trump will embrace it and do nothing. But for a Palestinian, it won't make any difference. It's the weapons. We got to cut the weapons off. May take a generation before people have enough. You are right about focusing on Iran. You are right about supposedly Israel has suffered, these figures are not public, 4,000 casualties in southern Lebanon. Many of these are life-crippling injuries because of, it's very short distance. You can throw somebody who's severely wounded on a helicopter and get them sophisticated medical care very quickly, but their lives are destroyed. You have an uptick in suicides among IDF soldiers, people who don't want to continue endless war. Yes, it is tearing apart the fabric of Israel. All of that said, Israelis, even those who hate Netanyahu, are totally behind the genocidal project. They want to eradicate the Palestinians from Gaza. That's the goal. They're largely achieving that in the north, but they want to eradicate them in the south, and they want to eradicate them in the West Bank. And they don't know, that is the intent. That's not in dispute. What the outcome will be, whether it worked, they don't know. We don't know. No one knows. But they're not being stopped. This is I spent 7 years covering Gaza, and of course have lost friends there. Others, the majority, have just disappeared after weeks. We don't hear from them. They're probably buried under the rubble. The fact that anybody could, support the Democratic Party or the Republican Party as if genocide and mass murder is part of normal governance, it shows we don't stand for anything. I mean, at that point, you stand for zero. And you deserve what you get.
Absolutely, and it was great having you on and having a conversation with you for the first time, Chris. We learned a lot from your expertise. Kshama, where can people go if they want to join or help Worker Strike Back? Any last plugs that you have, Kshama? Because obviously we may laugh and have fun on the channel, but at the end of the day, we need to get activated. So, any shout outs, anything you want to plug before we begin to wrap up, Kshama?
Yeah, just to repeat, first of all, that people who are watching this should join and sign up and try to come to the February conference on February 22nd, and also the Worker Strike Back National Convention the day after. If you want to hear Chris Hedges, Nick Cruse, and others speak, you should definitely join us there. But in addition, to all the conversation that we're having today about what is the way forward in order to um, address the incredibly horrendous situation that is faced by billions of working people on this planet, as Chris was saying earlier, the centrality of the labor movement and the role of the labor movement cannot be forgotten for even a second. And in that spirit, not only is Worker Strike Back organizing the February conference, we're also organizing more targeted events. So on December 1st, that's a Sunday, December 1st at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern, we will have a meeting over Zoom, which will be the first Worker Strike Back Labor Caucus meeting, and that will specifically discuss a strategy for union members. And if you don't have to be a union member to join this meeting, if you want to fight in your workplace to defend your fellow workers who are immigrants, to fight to stop any mass deportations that Trump is threatening, to end the wars, and to begin to build a militant group of workers in your workplace, then you should join us. That Sunday, December 1st at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. This will be our Worker Strike Back Labor Caucus meeting. And then on December 8th, so the week after that, at 12 p.m. Pacific, we're going to have study group Worker Strike Back meeting where we will be discussing how to rebuild the fighting labor movement. I mean, Chris, as Chris was saying correctly, so much of the history of the working class internationally, whether it's the Russian Revolution, the Haitian Revolution, so many courageous battles that have been engaged in on every continent, that history has been completely invisibilized because it is not in the interest of the capitalist class, whether here or in other country, to share that history, because they don't want to embolden workers. So we have to be the repositories of our own history. We have to look at our own ancestors, people who came before us, not in family relationship, but people who came before us, who fought in their time. And so on Sunday, December 8th, we're going to be discussing the lessons from the 1934 Minneapolis general strike, which is an incredible educator of what kind of fight back we need and how we can actually have strike action succeed. So hopefully people can join us at that as well, and go to workerstrikeback.org to find all this information.
Yeah, it's always great to be in the struggle with you, Kshama. Chris, I'm gonna give you opportunity for last word, and also to plug any work that you may want to promote or you just got done. Any last word, Chris?
Well, yeah, after I got thrown off the real news, I have a history of getting thrown off all sorts of places. I have chrishedges.substack.com, so everything comes out on there, and it goes out on YouTube. But if you want the columns and everything, it is there. But yeah, I can't. I want to second what Kshama said, that it's our salvation will be in labor, in and understanding, reconnecting with those radical roots, which she's right, have been erased from history. I mean, if you read the great anarchists and organizers, especially at the turn of the century, they were working 10, 12 hours a day in a sweatshop and then going off to study groups in the evening to read Marx and Herzen and every Kropotkin and everyone else. And we need to recapture. No successful movement will exist unless we can reconnect with our intellectual roots that have consciously been erased. Gramsci, everyone else. That is absolutely vital. Every successful revolutionary and labor movement includes a huge component of education, because they're not going to tell us. We've got to find out for ourselves.
Very well said. Thank you for joining us, Chris. Always great having you on, Kshama. Make sure you guys support Chris Hedges on Substack. Make sure you guys support Worker Strike Back. We'll be back with Kate Clarenberg tomorrow. I'm going to dive more into details regarding the NATO escalations tomorrow. My hotspot video is finished, so that should be releasing soon. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good rest of your day. Peace out.